Hi everybody and welcome to the July edition of What's New in Creative AI. If we're looking slightly suntanned, it's because we are. We are just back from the Cannes Festival of Creativity. And in fact, how does anybody get any work done in June? Because it's been one festival after another.
Oh, it's been a whirlwind. We had South by Southwest.
South by Southwest.
Then we had the AI Summit.
AI Summit.
And then we went straight to Cannes, although you went to
Cannes
Margate in
Lions.
between.
I went to Margate for a 50th birthday party. All the most glamorous locations.
And then we got a bit sick after Cannes, and now we're here.
There we go. We are back. So what's been going on?
We've got tons. So we're going to go through Cannes. We're going to talk a little bit about the AI Summit and a few other bits and pieces.
And all these webinars that you've been running.
Yeah, oh God.
Like 10, no,
I don't know
3.
why. I organised 3 at the beginning of June. They were all brilliant.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
So,
yeah. But yeah, we normally do like one every couple of months, and then we did 3 in 3 weeks. But
got a bit overexcited.
there we go. So AI Summit.
Yeah, so we did 2 things there. You ran a masterclass. It was packed. It was brilliant.
Standing room only, which I was quite pleased about. So yeah, I think we had about 60 or 70 people in the room. I was talking about...
By the way, I feel like my hair's standing up on end. Is it?
Not from this angle, but
good.
our
Great.
viewers will tell us if it looks standing up from that angle. Yeah, I did a masterclass on how AI is reshaping agencies and brands. I talked about how AI is reshaping agencies and brands. I talked about what's some of the stuff that we're seeing out there. We talked about Coca-Cola's Snow Globe campaign, I think, at Christmas, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, we did. We talked quite a bit about data, which is people got asked lots of questions about afterwards about how everything is data.
And how you can leverage first-party data if you've got that kind of thing. And we talked about what does it mean to sort of drive AI adoption in your marketing team or your agency. And about how it's really kind of a change management problem, not really a technology problem, or challenge, I should say. Problem's probably the wrong word. But yeah, we covered quite a lot of ground, had lots of questions afterwards, which was really good. But I think most of the stuff that goes on at the AI Summit is like huge corporations talking about what it takes to implement AI at the national grid or something, or you know how to build a supercomputer or something, like stuff that for most agencies and marketing teams is just like sort of pie in the sky type stuff. So I think what was refreshing...
But I think there were a lot of same challenges, big or small organisations, same challenges. But actually with the big organisations, it's often you have to sort of have a sledgehammer to turn that oil tanker, rather than with a smaller agile organisation, you can do a lot more. Yeah,
and I think often they have like different resources to throw at this stuff, right? So they have dedicated business transformation teams and analysts and stuff to help them do this kind of stuff. Whereas for most agencies, it's, you know, somebody having to put it on top of their day job has to suddenly pull on the AI lead t-shirt and go around and make stuff happen. So I think what we helped do was make it seem really practical and like what are the small steps that anybody can take to make this stuff happen. So
I think if you're an agency listening to this, or if you're in a brand team, AI Summit is quite interesting to go to, but you have to just be mindful that it's a lot of bigger organisations that are talked about, but there's loads of lessons there to kind of inspire what we can do at a smaller scale.
Yeah, and in fact, you then chaired a panel that was like about AI in agencies. And how you keep all of that human-centric.
It was called that. It was called, it was about human-centric AI in creative work, and intentionally had agencies of 3 different sizes there.
Okay, so who was on that with you?
There was Lily McCann from WPP.
Okay, so big.
And Lily is I think data science lead, so it's great to have someone from that background.
Yeah.
Matt Garbett from Brave Bison, who are doing some really pioneering stuff, building their own tech, like they all were actually, building their own AI systems internally.
Because
and lastly, and Kate Ross from 8 and 4, who are...
Yeah, Kate's great.
Well, they're not a small agency. I think
they're about 120 people or something?
Those guys, and they're a social agency.
And I know they've built their own platform. And we know about WPP. They've got Open, of course, which they don't stop talking about. What have Brave Bison been up to?
Well, they've got their own version in a similar way.
Right. Okay.
And it's I haven't gone into lots of detail with Matt about it. Actually, we were talking sort of much at a more principles level at the panel, but it's there's a big focus on research and audiences and understanding audiences and being able to personalised and individualised to.
Okay,
to
so less about
individuals.
generating the content itself, but more coming up with how do you make that content hyper relevant.
A content side as well. I think
Okay.
most of, like all three of them have got different models within their AI system for the different areas.
Okay.
But we talked a lot about audiences because the panel was about human centric.
Okay, so yeah, what was some of the takeaways?
There was a really nice quote, and I can't remember who said it. I'm really sorry, but
Unattributed
whichever one of the
quotes.
three said it, it was they said that AI raises the floor, but it also raises the ceiling. And particularly, obviously, this was around creativity, and I think what it's saying, and this applies to everything really, is that AI makes everyone more competent. It sort of lowers that, raises that baseline,
Raises that
not
floor.
lowers it.
Yeah.
But if you're brilliant, there's like even more headroom to go.
Right.
So
if you can really harness this stuff,
it just pushes everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact,
yeah.
we've seen quite a lot of studies now about sort of AI augmentation. I did a LinkedIn post on this morning, where people who have access to AI tools and have been reasonably well trained on them typically see anything from a 15 to 25% improvement in the quality of their output of their work.
Yeah.
So not they usually save a bit of time too, but actually it's the quality output that's the biggest thing. It is like having a skilled teammate help you do your job.
Yeah, totally. Another theme that came out quite strongly was the kind of like trade-off between speed and depth, and not to confuse something that's produced really quickly with something like versus something that's developed really deeply.
Right.
Like getting results faster doesn't always allow you to come up with the best solution. But,
Right. Okay. Because the
yeah.
temptation with these tools is to sort of rush, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you can do stuff faster and do the depth as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I guess the final point, which links back to the first point, is that the best tools and the best users of the tools are the people who do those jobs who would actually use them every day. So,
Right.
like for instance, Kate, Ace and 4, the people that they built their tools internally themselves because they had those skills in-house, but it was the strategists and the creatives and the different discipline expertise that had the ideas for the tools,
Right.
and they generated those through like away days and dedicated time to go off to spend doing like hackathons and things to come up with these ideas.
Right. So don't just hand it all over to your IT department.
No, and they don't kind of just wait for it to like organically this idea come out during the working day. But
Yeah.
they had interventions where they brought those ideas out and then paired up sort of subject matter experts with the development team to then build the tools.
Got it.
So I thought,
Yeah.
it's worked very well for them.
Brilliant.
So that was AI Summit.
That was the AI Summit.
And it was at Tobacco Dock, which is a really cool 80s location.
Yeah.
Liked it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
1800s / 1980s. Yeah.
The refurb is 80s, so it has real 80s vibes.
Yeah.
Felt like I needed shoulder pads.
Anyway, shortly after that, we jumped on a plane out to Cannes.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Wow,
It was hot.
Cannes, hot.
It was hectic.
full on.
Meetings, talks, you name it.
Yeah.
From first thing in the morning till late at night.
And everyone talks about the sort of beautiful meeting of people that you know and who you
Serendipitousness
don't,
of
on
it
the
all.
street, on the beach, all those places. And that's very true.
Yeah.
And it's very lovely that you sort of see people that you weren't expecting to see.
Strangely, many of our contacts in the UK who we don't get to see very often here, we saw them out there. How
Yeah.
odd.
So very lovely.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely worth going, we thought. But for me, neurodiverse me needed a lot of decompression time.
And relax.
Lots of breaks. Yeah. So I'd recommend building that in as well.
So what did we learn?
Yeah, so we boiled it down to 7 key things that we learned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the first one up, which has got my name against it, is creators plus AI equals big shift. That's what it says in our notes.
Yes. So, actually, I went to lots of talks about this, so I'm going to talk about it.
Great.
Shouldn't have your name on it. Basically, creators was a huge thing, as it probably was there last year as well. And I think a lot of brands are spending a really high proportion of their marketing budgets now.
I think
on
I've mentioned
creators.
this on this pod
Probably.
before, but Unilever's new CEO said he's going to spend 50% of Unilever's marketing budget on influencers this year. And they are one of the biggest spenders in marketing on the planet.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the influencer economy is alive and well.
It's huge. But influencers are using AI in really canny ways. So I think there are things that we can learn from this as agencies.
Okay.
So I went to a talk by Lucy Gu, who was one half of Scale AI.
Yeah, who have just been acquired by Meta for $15 billion.
Yeah, so she's now the youngest female billionaire in the world, I think.
24 or something?
I know she's under 30,
Yeah.
but she may only be 24.
I think she was a billionaire at 24,
Yeah.
and she's now about 26.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So her new venture is called Passes, and it's a platform for creators to basically manage their workloads.
Right.
And it is AI powered, of course. So it enables them to get into the detail of all their analytics in the same way that you would as a marketing team, but they do it as an individual, I guess, with their team if they're a big creator.
Okay. Like the same as like a big media team would do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So they can really understand, the best times, the highest revenue.
Right. What things are working, what aren't, which
all that
audiences
stuff.
are engaging with which content.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Great.
that's
So it
what
gives them all the
Passes is
intel.
about. Yeah, exactly. So Lucy Gu talks about that, but we also saw other creators giving presentations as well, giving examples of how they use AI in their workflow to, for instance, create a brand video or something.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting the use of AI in the influencer economy because, the reason why we follow influencers in theory is because they're authentic, right? We trust them more than we trust brands, or they're more engaging than stuff that comes out of brands. So I can totally see creators using AI tools to help them come up with content plans and ideas and scripts and all that stuff. But you kind of feel that if they then start generating the videos and stuff with AI, then are they losing what makes them real? On the other hand, certainly out in China, we are seeing AI influencers become huge in their own right, with hundreds of thousands of followers for somebody who's completely generated by AI.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly there is a human sitting behind that, creating that personality and that persona or whatever. But
I think what we're going to see, going back to human creators using AI,
Right.
it's very confusing.
got a bit off piece there.
I think we're going to see a much higher volume of content from them because they're able now. They are creating much. It's not such a slow process. They're not having to go to location, do that thing,
Right.
and then come back, and then it's not the whole. It's like in agencies, they're doing the same thing.
Right.
But they're
streamlining
even
their
more
own
nimble.
content creation.
They are.
Got
They
it.
are.
But yeah, there was a lot of talk about AI and influencers at Cannes. They were the two big themes, I think.
I mean,
the
it really
creator
was
economy.
the AI influencer festival.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And
The second theme, then, I think. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say some more on that topic?
no, I was just going to link it to the next one, but you got in there too.
Do a nice segue. Go on.
I don't know what the segue is, but video is the next topic.
Oh, that was as good as my segue.
Oh, what was yours going
That
to be?
was it.
Oh, okay. Video. So the other big thing, I mean, when we're saying people were talking about AI a lot, they were basically talking about video 90% of the time.
AI
video. And how AI video production was becoming more important. We got to speak with the founder of Umbrella, a big agency, big production company based out of Hungary with offices in UK and Germany.
Oh, yes.
Who
Yeah,
they are a
really
traditional
interesting.
film production company, but have now got 15 people working in their AI production division. Interestingly, they actually make higher margin off their AI jobs than they do off their traditional production jobs, even though they're only a third of the cost.
I think
third
that was
of the
Pod
price.
London as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So.
Yeah, together.
But so that's great. Okay, so everyone's leaning into AI video production. We heard Martin Sorrell talk about how S4C or Monks, I think, had done a commercial recently for one of their clients where they had delivered the whole thing for 200K instead of about 1.2 million the last time they did a film shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took them 12 days instead of
I can't remember what it was
12
before, but
weeks
let's
to shoot.
Scale it up. Yeah.
So definitely, producing existing content but using existing forms of content but using AI video is definitely starting to go mainstream, especially in the bigger agencies or those that have come from a film production background and are leaning into it. But I think the other thing that we learned, which certainly opened my eyes, is just like, where might this all actually be going?
Yeah.
We went to a super interesting...
It's beyond just making videos as we think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, we got to spend a bit of time at the Google Beach, where they were showing off VO3, their new engine, which you've probably seen. There's been a lot of stuff going around on LinkedIn and Instagram with it. Very, very powerful video engine that also does sound as well, including realistic dialogue. And people, there was a Super Bowl ad that made a lot of news a few weeks ago that was created by with somebody using VO3 in 2 days straight. So they were showing off their agentic creative platform, where you can go from hand-drawn sketches to images created with Imagen 4 through to video created with VO3, and tie all of that together into a workflow, all built on Google Cloud. That was super interesting to see, and that sort of shows the next step of building these kind of semi-automated workflows, I guess, to create these things. But then the real thing that I think blew our minds was we went to a talk hosted by the FT with Martin Sorrell, and the head of Luma AI, that are based out in the UAE, and the head of Humane, who are a Saudi-backed AI infrastructure business, and the head of creative partnerships at Adobe. And that was a super interesting convo. And they're envisaging a world, perhaps not too far away, where on-demand personalized video content is just the way that people interact with a lot of the world. Imagine that you want to learn the news. You don't read a website anymore. You just ask your device, can you give me a 30-minute news bulletin?
And it gives you a personalised video news bulletin.
Literally generated on the spot.
Yeah.
Or you want to learn how to do something. You want a tutorial in Adobe Photoshop. So it just creates one to learn how to do a particular thing. It'll just create the video for you. Or you want some entertainment. You say, just give me another show from Mission Impossible, and it will just create one for you with a storyline that you choose. So they're imagining a world where everybody on the planet, 8 billion people, might be consuming an hour of custom-generated video every day.
Yeah.
And they are trying to build that future. And that's pretty astonishing.
And they're trying to build the compute power for it through Humane.
Yeah,
as well.
Imagine the infrastructure needs of something like that.
So yeah, Luma and Humane have signed a partnership, haven't they?
That's right.
And Humane is based in Saudi,
Yeah.
whose ambition is to be the third kind of
AI superpower.
world. Yeah, exactly.
They want to have cheaper compute than anybody else.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what we see coming out of them.
So Saudi is certainly happy to throw the cash around. So let's see if they've got as much cash as Silicon Valley and China.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting and a bit mind expanding for us anyway.
And I think actually we talked about this one already that we were going to talk about. So we're just going to skip on to the next one.
We just wrapped 2 and 3 into 2.5. So we're going to go straight to 4.
Yeah. So this came up at quite a few panels that I went to, certainly, and it's where there were agencies talking about how using AI internally was really changing their team structures, something they hadn't expected. They were finding that their different teams were working way more closely together, more fluidly and interchangeably. So like creative, strategy, data teams, all kind of interacting on the same thing rather than handing off in the way that they used to. So that's so a lot of agencies are starting to take that kind of organic change and proactively like work out what that structure should be rather than it. In
a microcosm, we see that in some of our workshops at Spark. I ran one of our AI for Strategists workshops with one of our accelerator clients just a few weeks ago, and one of the lessons that they took away from that, was that they needed to collaborate more across different roles when they use these tools, because the idea sharing becomes so powerful. So they kind of discovered that on their own, just through the exercises that we were taking them through. Yeah,
and I think, I talked earlier about how Kate from 8 and 4 talked about how it was a lot of strategists led the development of their internal tools, but that was about, pairing up with the developer.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting when you're pairing up kind of subject matter specialists with more generalist skills or more tech skills, and what can come out of that, which typically we would have kept sort of at separate parts of the process.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I think something we also saw, and I think we've been seeing it coming for a little while now, is you can't get away from the fact that yes, generative AI is accessible by anybody because you can communicate with these things in plain English. But to get the best out of them and to do powerful workflows with them, you do need some technology skills.
Yeah.
And I think what we're starting to see, we've seen it first with the big networks building their own platforms. We've heard it now from people, like Cater 8x4 and Brave Bison, who have built their own platforms as well, is that to really start to leverage this stuff, you need people who understand creativity but understand technology too. And I think what we're going to start to see, these creative technologist roles that straddle both those worlds are becoming more and more important. And I think for a lot of agencies, even smaller agencies, if you want to get beyond AI augmentation, if you want to get beyond using a language model and using Midjourney or Runway and onto something more powerful, you need people who understand the technology and can build those workflows for you.
If you want to develop your own tools and to create your own IP around it.
Yeah. And even if those tools are built on existing platforms and you're just linking things together to make them more streamlined or more productive for you, you need people who can understand Comfy UI, who can install Stable Diffusion in a local environment for you, who can build workflows across those tools for you. And those creative technologist roles, even for smaller agencies, I think are going to become important. So, your next hire at your agency, it might not be a copywriter or a designer. It might actually be one of these technology roles that still understand creativity. They're not hardcore developers. These are people who understand what creative output is and what is required to make it good. But they can also interact with these with systems and build things.
And they can really unlock the ideas in the rest of the team as well.
So that was a big takeaway. And then you went,
5.
Yeah, you went to a talk with Arthur Sadoun from Publicis, who, of all of the big agency groups, they're the ones that are on fire right now.
They've been doing really well. So I guess my one takeaway from there, which was really short, really is that he was talking about how his strategy and key to his success has been basically ensuring that he hires the right and the best people. AI came second.
Okay.
They have their AI, but there's nothing
platform
without having the best people. And so that's been his strategy, and that's going to continue to be his strategy. And I just wanted to talk about that because I think it's easy to forget that in this environment where it's all AI the whole time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's probably been the winning business strategy for every business since forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, you need brilliant people, and especially in the world we live in, right, where you live or die by your last few projects. So, I think not losing sight of the fact that it's our people really that are going to differentiate us is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then number 6.
So we heard a lot about this in talks as well. So those of you that have read or attended any of our Spark stuff will know that we always emphasize the need to sort of think first before you engage in any of this stuff, and then critically assess the outputs of any AI stuff, like is it answering your question, is it doing what you want it to do? And I'm pleased to say that was a big message coming out of Cannes as well.
Yeah, and coming out with some studies that have been published since Cannes around kind of cognitive offloading, which we talked about before here.
Yeah, that's clever words for switching your brain off.
Yeah, that's clever. It's a way of saying, I can't be bothered to do this thing, let's just see if AI can do it.
Yeah. So, but one of the big things we saw coming out was, we went to a few talks at the LBB beach, the Little Black Book beach, which is where most of the independents hang out. Which was great. And there was a lot of talk about this balance between craft and automation. Even when you're using AI tools, like you can be doing stuff that's highly bespoke and highly crafted still, or you can be building, things at scale where there's large amounts of automation going on, and different projects will require different skills and different approaches depending on what you're trying to do. But all of these things require a great deal of thought going into it up front. So if you're crafting stuff, you need to be really intentional about what you're doing. If you're trying to automate stuff at scale, instead, you need to be really intentional about the guardrails that you're putting around that stuff. When you're creating 10,000 assets, you can't review every single one by hand. You can't. So how do you know that they're all going to be okay? So that was kind of interesting, and hearing how Coca-Cola's Snow Globe campaign last Christmas they talked about how users could go on a website, have an interview with Santa about a childhood memory, and it would then generate a snow globe of that memory, which people could then share on social media. They had 1.1 million people make a snow globe. Amazing. And it sort of vastly outperformed all their expectations. But how did they make it? So you can't review 1 million snow globes. So they had to have your interview with Santa, they had to screen to make sure you hadn't asked for anything obscene. They then had to make sure they had another screening test, like LLMs checking each other to check that Santa didn't say anything obscene back to you. And then they had to check that the video generated didn't have anything obscene in it. So they had all of these guardrails like built into the system to make sure that when you generate 1 million snow globes, they're all going to be okay and on brand.
Yeah.
So
Those
there's a lot of thought and detail that goes into these things. It's not just press a button.
Yeah. Important to remember. And then
Topic 7.
The last point from Candace is, so we went to a talk where I can't remember her name, but she was from Dentsu. I think she was the ECD at Dentsu. Anyway, she was brilliant, but she talked about how she's building an AI creative director, but she's building it to be as cynical as possible, which I thought was very interesting, because really to overcome the sort of inherent optimism that's always in AI, and but also to make sure that if you're running an idea past this AI creative director, perhaps you're using that as your first pass before going to her in person, that it introduces the kind of the friction and the mischief and the resistance that is brought about by that creative discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you've used ChatGPT, and it's anything you type in, it goes, brilliant idea. Yeah. These things are pretty sycophantic. In fact, someone described them to me the other day as like dogs. They're always trying to please you. Our dog doesn't do that, but some do. And I think that building in that inherent challenge and friction is important to getting the best out of these things.
I think so. It's a bit
but I like the idea of building an AI creative director. What were they trying to do with that?
Well, she didn't actually talk about that, but what I'm assuming and what a lot of people are doing with these kind of AI versions of themselves or of a role is that it enables them to...
it
enables the team
a sparring partner.
Well, yes, a sparring partner for other people that need to work with a creative director, or perhaps for herself.
Yeah.
But also it means if you're super stretched and you want to be someone to be able to run something past you first time, to be able to create a version of yourself.
Okay, got it. So it's the first check for your team to say, well, is this any good or not?
That's my assumption.
I run it past the virtual one before I go and actually have a meeting with the boss.
And in fact, we were talking to a really interesting company a couple of weeks ago called 99 Ravens, who are doing something very similar.
Yeah, they're trying to create AI. They're going to try to distill your expertise into an AI.
Yeah. So that other people can interact with that AI.
So you
when
don't
they don't
become
have
the
access
bottleneck.
to you. Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we need a Jules AI.
Well, we've always needed a Jules AI. We probably need an Emma AI.
Well, probably, yeah. But so we thought that was super interesting about building in the cynicism.
Yeah.
And I think you can use that as well, just in your general prompting with ChatGPT, with any large language model. It doesn't have to be a specifically created persona.
Yeah, so those are our 7 themes from Cannes. Influencers, using AI strategically, video and where it's all going, from automation through to changing the world, skills and how the skills are changing, and team structures are changing, how it's still all about having the best people. Don't forget to not switch your brain off, and build in a bit of cynicism with these models.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was Cannes. So we got back from Cannes slightly exhausted. And the next topic that's listed on our thing just says June webinar frenzy. And
so before we went to Cannes, before we went to the AI summit, before we did all that stuff, I recorded 3 webinars. Just wanted to mention them because they're really worth watching. They were brilliant.
Yeah, there were actually some really good ones.
Yeah.
They were all actually really good.
Really
good.
So
first up.
Yeah, the first one was I spoke to Luke Taylor from United Us and Kate Ross again from 8 and 4. Lovely Kate got to see me twice in 1 month.
She's probably sick of us by now.
Probably is.
As is Luke. He's appeared on one of our webinars before as well.
Yeah, but they're just awesome.
They are.
They've both taken very different approaches with AI in their agencies, but both of them are very clear that being distinctive in this world of AI is the thing that will what's the right word?
Make you distinctive.
Exactly. Well, yes, make you distinctive.
So this webinar was actually called "Why Distinctiveness is Your Survival Strategy."
That's probably the way to describe
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So what came out of that?
So yeah, we've talked earlier already about Kate and Platform 12. But there's the AI system they've built internally, their AI tool,
Which is client facing, right? Like their clients can
actually
interact
no,
with it
they
too.
use it internally, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But what was really interesting about that is the thing that hasn't really come up before is that investing the time and energy and everything in building that, they have been able to cut so many of their existing subscriptions, which we know
Right.
is the bane of many businesses' lives.
Ours too.
So it's not just that it's enabled them to grow the business based on having that tool alone, is that it's actually reduced their costs quite significantly.
That is interesting.
Very
okay.
interesting.
So you
isn't
spend
it?
the money up front, but you save it in the long run. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're a social agency, so Platform 12 is a lot about augmenting their creative workflows, creating like really hyper local content and being able to localize things really easily.
I mean, separately, I've spoken to Kate because I interviewed her for my book. Ooh, the book is coming out in October, hopefully. Submitted the manuscript today. But one of the things she spoke about was how it's not necessarily the direct ROI that you get off a tool like that. It's not like it suddenly prints you new money because you can sell this thing to clients. It's more about differentiating yourself and about standing out in the market, getting you access to conversations you wouldn't have otherwise.
And creating intellectual property for yourself, really.
Yeah, exactly. Boosting the value of your agency, right?
Yeah, and something she said that stood out for me in that webinar was she said that if you're not shaping AI around your values as a business, then you're just reacting to it. And so
Yeah, and on our leadership program, where we help agencies figure out what AI means for them, the first question we ask them has nothing to do with AI.
Yeah.
We say, what are you actually trying to be brilliant at? Because AI needs to support that.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to know why you're doing it, right?
You don't just want to randomly apply it.
Yeah.
And then Luke takes a really different approach. And it's sort of, I guess, that the agency itself is a bit quieter about AI, but it's like just as powerful how they're using it in a very different way. So they're using it a lot for internal operations, for mock-ups, for templates. But really what the really standout thing for me, which I hadn't heard before from Luke, was that he's finding the real power of it is in helping their clients create brand consistency. So if they've done a brilliant branding project, a lot of the consistency is lost as it's rolled out across
different global
PowerPoint
teams
templates and all that kind of, it just gets all
suddenly the
corrupted.
team in Brazil have gone rogue.
But the use of AI enables that consistency, which then in turn sort of amplifies the brand.
Yeah, and that echoes a message when I interviewed Rahul Malhotra, who's the marketing director of Shell out in Singapore. And they have done something very similar, built internal AI systems that help them maintain brand consistency across the globe. So he runs the Marketing Centre of Excellence for Shell out in Singapore, where they supply or help local teams apply the Shell brand in their markets. Very similar approach. So yeah, great to see that happening.
Yeah, and I both 8and4 and United Dust have both used AI to reinforce their existing positioning.
Yeah. Build on what you're already brilliant at.
That was the real takeaway from that. And then the following week, I met with two of our previous clients, our AI Accelerator clients.
So the first two clients to go through our AI Accelerator program. So we worked with Mark Making, they're a brilliant B2B agency, and we also worked with Analog, that are a fantastic, very creative agency working with entertainment brands.
Yeah, Yeah, so I talked to them about what it was like to get very serious about AI in a very focused period of time, which is how we work through AI Accelerator.
The clue's in the name, Accelerator. We do it quickly.
So they talked about how we'd help them through we have a framework called the Automation, Augmentation, Innovation Framework. So they found that very valuable.
What was the biggest sort of what was the biggest unlock for them? What was it that they were stuck on before they started working with us, do you think?
I think what came across in both of them was that the realization that it wasn't actually a technology thing that was making them get stuck, that it's like a getting people on board. It's like a change management behaviors type thing.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things I heard coming out of hearing them talking about it, I wasn't on the webinar, but I listened to it afterwards, is talking about how at first it can just seem a bit overwhelming. You know, it's like, how do you eat the elephant? And it's, you just got to break it down into piece by piece by piece.
And what is the order to break it down in?
And what's the order to break it down in, definitely.
Yeah.
And what was some of the value, do you think, that they said they got out of it?
Oh, well, Ollie said that it more than paid for itself before the end of the program. So that was like music to our ears. That's amazing.
Yeah. Should have paid him to say that.
Yeah. I know. Well, we didn't need to. So
yeah,
great.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep that money. Yeah.
I think I don't want to put words in Annie's mouth, but he talked a lot about how it made them really focus on their business strategy, actually, and get really laser focused on that, because that had to be super sharp in order to use AI for positive things.
You almost need to be, you need to have your strategy nailed down to know what you're using AI for, right?
Yeah.
What are you actually trying to achieve with it?
Exactly, yeah. So, take a look at that. We've had really great, people have found it really helpful to listen to.
Yeah, so check that out.
We'll put it in the show notes.
And that was 2 webinars. What was the third one?
Yeah, and then I met with Becky McCowens-Banks, but I haven't written down the detail here. But Becky is an ECD and but also
an AI coach.
Similar to us, does AI coaching as well. So we really compared notes about trends that we're both seeing across agencies and really practical advice as well.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot about what you talked about because you can't remember.
Doesn't work like that.
But check out the webinar. So all of these webinars are on the events page of the Spark website. All of our previous events you can see there. You can click through and watch the recording.
And Becky, I'll talk about our webinar more next time. Promise.
Yes, more.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So this morning you were talking about how a lot of our clients, the first question obviously is like, what large language model should I subscribe to?
Right.
And you were going to pull together, because we answer this all the time, you were going to pull together a bit of an advice paper.
Right. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know we were talking about this. So
I thought it might be useful.
Good thing I've been thinking about it recently. So one of the big messages we try to give is that to get over this sort of tool anxiety is that 90% of anything you can do with AI, you can do with just 3 tools. A meeting note taker, a large language model, and a diffusion model, which, they're the image generating ones. And broadly speaking, it doesn't really matter which one, because they're all good, they're all getting better all of the time, and the difference in performance between the models will largely be down to you rather than the model itself, like how well you're using it. But there are clearly some rules of thumb which kind of make sense, which is, if your whole agency is built on a Microsoft environment and all your data sits in Microsoft SharePoint, there's probably not a lot of reasons to go very far from Microsoft Copilot, because it just integrates with everything nice and easily. Like, you don't really want to be having to save every document as a PDF to be able to upload it to something else. It just sits natively in your environment and it works pretty well. Likewise, if you're a Google house and all your stuff sits on a Google Drive, then Gemini is a brilliant AI model and you basically get it for free.
Yeah, it's really good.
And it's integrated into your docs and your sheets. It integrates obviously with your Google Drive and all that stuff. So you can build little gems that then sit in your thing on the side of your apps to be able to use them. So again, if you're in a Google environment, there's an awful lot to be said for just going with Gemini. And then, of course, there's ChatGPT, which straddles both those worlds. So, it's the first one on the block. I mean, it's still the one that we use the most, just even though we work in a Google world.
But I think it just shows like the habitualness of once you start using
just because
one.
it was the first one we started using,
Yeah.
right? So we started building custom GPTs in there, and now obviously it's a bit painful to do it in something else.
Well, not really, but it's just a mental leap, isn't it?
And I think, but there is still with Gemini, so all of these tools still have, they have deep research available now, and they have data analysis available now. They all have voice mode these days.
They've all mainly got the same things with the same names.
Yeah, there's very little going on between them. But what I would say is ChatGPT is versatile as it can plug into Microsoft SharePoint or into Google Drive.
Yeah.
So it's very flexible. They've also started releasing some new integrations, like it now integrates with HubSpot, which for some agencies is a big deal. For one of our clients, that is a big deal, as HubSpot's a strategic platform for them. And no doubt they're going to be building out more of these connectors, they call them, over time.
Sure.
But I think with Gemini, although the model is great, Gemini 2.5 Pro, top tier model, just as good as anything from OpenAI, their equivalent of custom GPTs, which in Microsoft they call them agents, ChatGPT calls them custom GPTs, and Gemini calls them gems. And very useful way of working, creating these little AI assistants that are trained on a particular task. In Gemini, those are not yet shareable. They're still stuck with the individual user.
Yeah.
And as I think that's probably the only drawback to using Gemini right now, is that these gems are not shareable, which means if you want your teammates to work the same way as you, you've kind of got to cut and paste the instructions into an email or something, send them over or a Slack and send them over, and then somebody's got to create it themselves.
I would expect that's something that's going to change though, because you can share Google Notebook LM, for example.
You can.
There are other things you can share within your team with people with the same email address.
Yeah, so there is, so it will come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite why they haven't done it yet. They're obviously coming up with some issues around it that they're having to solve. But yeah, for the moment, right now, you can't solve them.
That's the main thing.
So I think that's the one little black mark against Gemini. The one little black mark against ChatGPT is the fact that it doesn't have an equivalent of Notebook LM.
Yeah.
So Google, I'm sure everybody is aware of Notebook LM now. It had its viral moment about 6 months ago when they introduced the podcast feature. But it's a brilliant, essentially a RAG system, a retrieval augmented generative system, which allows you to base your responses only on the sources that you give it. Very, very powerful tool. Microsoft have released their equivalent one within Copilot, also called Notebooks. In fact, it automatically creates notebooks for all of your SharePoint sites. Super handy. ChatGPT at the moment does not have a solution for that. So
again,
they all have their slight strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it does depend a little bit. There's no right or wrong here. They just all have slight strengths and slight weaknesses. And for some of you, those won't matter very much. And for others, those might matter a lot.
And the other aspect is subscription costs as well, because some of these might be built into existing subscriptions.
Yeah, so Gemini is essentially free if you're a Google house. Copilot is £20 a month per user, I think. And ChatGPT, if you're using it for work, you need to be on a Teams or enterprise account. And so you're looking at $30, $35 a month per person.
Yeah.
So these things do add up.
They do add up.
If you can't get $30 a month value out of a ChatGPT or Copilot subscription, you are simply not trying hard enough.
Yeah. Great message. That's really useful. Thanks, Jules. Sorry for putting you on the spot. You did very well.
Is that it?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
There's still more notes.
There are still more notes.
Right,
So,
I haven't seen these ones either.
well, you didn't read down far enough.
Okay, all right.
I was just going to mention...
Tool test.
Yeah.
New feature alert.
One of our team, EJ, tested the ChatGPT record function, which I think is only available on the desktop version.
It rolled out last week to the Mac desktop app.
Yeah.
So we talked about how one of the 3 tools you need is a meeting recorder.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of people don't think to use these things for in-person meetings.
Yeah,
because actually recording in-person
amazing.
meetings super helpful.
Internal meetings with the team.
But it's a little bit clunky to set up a Google Meet or a Teams call and then invite your meeting note taker when it's just like one laptop in the room.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT have just made it a button. You just press the thing.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So what did EJ find out?
So she thought the transcriptions were good. It does good follow-up prompts, which I haven't tested actually, but that sounds quite useful to clarify
at the end of the
things
meeting.
at the end. end.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, but it's a bit buggy still. The thing that was particularly difficult was that when your laptop starts to go to sleep.
It can't. It doesn't have access to the OS, so it can't stop your laptop going to sleep.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
have to set your laptop to be. You have to override the sleep function,
Right.
which is tricky.
Yeah.
And then there's
sounds like my life overriding the sleep function. Right.
And then also, I think that there's a cap on the number of I can't speak. Number of minutes you can record. I think it's
Yeah, it stops at 2
120.
hours. Yeah, that's right. It stops
yeah.
at 2 hours.
Yeah.
So keep
So-
those meetings short.
Yeah, so we record all our workshops so that we got a really great record with our
clients.
For clients. So that would be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more testing to come on that, I think.
Okay.
I feel like we've gone way over time.
Yeah, so lucky listeners, the last heading says outro, which I think means we've come to the end.
Whew.
Whew, right.
It's got a heart next to it as well.
Yeah, so what is it? That's what happens when you use chat to write your notes. It puts emojis everywhere. So what does it say? It says, Emma, to say some words.
Well, my words are, that's it for this episode. We've loved seeing you.
We got to see some of you at the AI Summit and out in Cannes.
Yeah.
We'd love to see more of you
Yeah.
next time.
And there's just one note to say that our autumn availability for our programs are like just about almost full. So if you are interested in working with us in the autumn, please give us a heads up and we can just at least pencil you in, because we hate disappointing people.
Yeah, we do find clients sometimes take ages to make a decision and then they want it to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we can't respond quite that fast, so just give us a little bit of notice.
Yeah, we'd love that. Fab. So that really is all for today.
Thanks for listening, and remember, use AI to sharpen your creativity, not smother it. See you next time.
That's what ChatGPT said, not us.
See you next time.
See you.
Done.
Smother it.
That's what it says.
Awful.
That's what it says.
I haven't read that.
Have we done exactly what we tell people not to do, which is just take an AI output and go with it?
I did do lots of thinking beforehand. I just didn't do much afterwards.
Much
'cause
critiquing
I didn't
afterwards.
have much time.
Right, okay. Bit of
Yeah.
a rush. It is Sunday night. Okay,
Cool.
done. That's the B-roll sorted as well.